Kia ora, ladies and gentlemen, good evening and welcome to Citizen A, where we wrap the week's current affairs with the best political team on television from a very Auckland perspective. Warning, we're as fair and balanced as Fox News. Joining me tonight, I'm a revolving panel of bloggers and Auckland opinion shapers. She's the most powerful female politician in the country. Her hobbies include environmentalism, Westism and fighting evil. The Deputy Mayor of the Auckland Super City and high-ranking Jedi Knight, Mrs. Call It Like It Is, Penny Holtz. And as one of the few Auckland Green candidates, she is an endangered species. Freedom fighter and friend of the people and planet, Auckland Central Green Party candidate, the ever-brilliant and should have been in the top 10 Green Party top list, Denise Roche. You know you were robbed. You were absolutely robbed. Welcome to you both. Issue 1. What does this hate crime against Heritage Casino, masquerading as a conference centre, mean for the St. James? And in the wake of the decision not to charge the Choi brothers for destroying the Palace Hotel, can the Super City ever protect Auckland's heritage? Issue 2, social responsibility time. Should chronic be sold in dairies and should loan sharks be reined in? Issue 3 tonight, Mana by-election. Is it the beginning of the end of the Māori Party? Who will win? And what are the ramifications if Mana win? And we'll end the show on a final word, but let's kick things off with issue 1. Sky City have managed to bribe the government into giving them a casino pretending to be a conference centre. This means the plan to regenerate the St. James and RTS Centre are left swamped in the wake of this hate crime against Auckland architectural heritage. Does the council even care about heritage anymore? Penny, the gutless decision to not prosecute the Choi brothers for accidentally destroying the Palace Hotel so that they can accidentally build a multi-storey battery cage sex farm is proof the council have given up trying to protect heritage, isn't it?
It's going to be a difficult evening. Bora, I think we've had a really rough ride over the last few months with heritage, and I have to say we've inherited a lot of stuff from the previous council. With heritage, we've got a council that is really trying to retrofit a lot of bad decisions. So starting with the Choi brothers, the building fell down. It's a tragedy. We have taken the last month or so to look at every possible opportunity to prosecute these men for this tragedy. The reality is, the advice we have from the Crown Prosecutor is we simply don't have a case that sticks. Even if we did, 500,000 roughly of ratepayers' money to go after a $10,000 fine, you know, the maths on that seems wrong.
Why are they so low?
The bigger,
Why are the restrictions
well, this
so
is,
low?
and
Why?
I would love, with a good Green coalition in government, let's just start to get really tough on some of these. The bigger issue, however, is how we grapple with heritage in the future, and you know, I'd like to talk a little bit about that.
Denise, the Choi brothers pulled the same stunt by accidentally destroying a heritage building in Wellington so that they can accidentally build a multi-storied battery cage sex farm there as well. Seeing as local councils can't defend heritage, should political parties be stepping in and making sustainability a central government issue?
Yes, definitely. I mean, we see it all the time. We see central government come in and say, listen, you council, we've had enough of you playing around like this, so we're going to take over. They did it with creating Auckland Super City, for example. So there is no reason why we can't get our government to say we want some national standards on this. We've got national environmental standards, let's have some heritage standards.
Why is it that $10,000 is all we can charge people who destroy heritage, for crying out loud?
Yeah, well, obviously our laws and the ability for our councils to make laws is not that strong, and we do need to strengthen that if we want to stop people running roughshod over our cities like this.
Because I imagine that the amount of the amount of value that the Palace Hotel is worth, just the hotel itself, and then the land would be much more worthwhile than the Palace Hotel, wouldn't it?
Oh gosh, yes. I think, you know, 10 million between the Palace Hotel on site and the demolished Palace Hotel on a clean slate site. You know, and a cynic would say, how convenient. But
I'm being cynical. I'm being really cynical.
You couldn't possibly
think,
say, Penny,
I know I couldn't. You might say it and think it, but I couldn't possibly say. The reality, however, is that we need to grapple with the remaining heritage, and we have set up a heritage fund for the express purpose of buying on behalf of the city heritage buildings, of stepping in and taking heritage orders in a proactive way. And we've got a couple of buildings that we've intervened with that were in imminent danger of demolition, and hopefully we've kind of rescued them from the brink. buildings like the St James, you know, I think and we've talked about this before on the show, it's that kind of fund that needs to go towards saving some of these buildings that are in desperate and dire need of support.
Penny, does the financial case hold up for the council when we're looking at the conference centre? By endorsing the casino that's pretending to be a conference centre, the council slash their own asset, because the RTS Centre do 50% of their business in conferences. Putting the St James to one side, aren't we supporting an eyesore that will end up depleting our own assets?
Aye, this is one of those really difficult ones. The decision on where the convention centre was going to go was a government decision, and I guess they may well have been swayed by the fact that no government funding was required in the construction of the convention centre.
Yeah.
So
So
you
they've
know,
bought
Aotea,
themselves, because the guys said they've bought themselves a conference centre.
did miss out.
Yeah.
We've got to actually look at the fact that we don't know if the other bidders were actually allowed to throw in a casino with their bid. Did the
Well,
Edge?
if the Edge did, then they would have certainly got it.
Yeah, well, I mean, maybe we should go back to and say, let's do some fair bidding here. Let's have the same
Maybe
things on
the
the
St
table.
James start putting in one-armed slot bandits
Yeah.
to be able to get them through. Why are we ignoring, Denise, the social costs when we develop in New Zealand? The Greens are one of the few political parties
Oh,
who
absolutely.
take sustainability seriously. Why are we stooping to casinos being growth generators?
Absolutely. I mean, it is not necessarily going to be a free convention centre, because when you factor in the problems and the harm that will be generated as a result of increasing the tables and the pokies, then you're looking at an increase in money laundering. And there's been, 14 cases, I think, of money laundering at the Sky City
Just
Casino.
at the Sky City
Just at
Casino,
Sky
just
City.
at it, man.
Yeah. So we can look forward to some more crime.
Right.
We can look forward to some more problem gambling, and we know that 40% of the profits come from that small percentage
Yep.
of problem gamblers. So
Yep.
this is not something that is going to generate a fabulous growth for our city. This is there is a price attached, and we will all be paying for it.
Question to both of you: what is going to happen to the St James now the casino, pretending to be a conference centre, has won over the proposal to save it? What are we going to do? Okay, so if the conference centre's idea is off the table, what are we going to do about the St James?
We've got, and I know this always seems like, what do councils do? We've got a report coming.
God bless them.
I know, God bless us for that. But believe you me, after the
You gotta
last
read
couple
it.
of days, it's
Yeah.
very exciting to get everyone to agree on one thing. Everyone agreed that the St James is utterly a critical piece of infrastructure. We do need a report to work out, where does the money come from? What do we do with the St James? What's the work that's needed? And who are the partners who are going to join with us in saving this beautiful old building? But not just, as a shell in a place. It needs to have a life and a meaning, and things happening in it. So, we're hoping that there will be a good way forward for the St James.
What kind of political muscle do you have on that group? Because it seems that you're going to need the political muscle, aren't you? You're going to need either National or Labour to come on board here.
Yeah, we might. I guess we're used to, as councils flying on our own. I don't know whether this is necessarily a government issue. I think there are community organisations and certainly funding organisations.
If
we
it
need
was
to
in
partner
Wellington,
with.
it would become a government issue, wouldn't it?
Well,
if it was an old theatre in
and
Wellington,
Wellington,
gosh, they wouldn't be able to move
the
fast
government
enough to save it, would
miraculously
they?
paid for the trains, the double tracking, the electrification. Strangely in Auckland, we have to pay for those things. So don't get me started on
St
that.
James, what are we going to do?
Well, I think Penny's right. We do really need the council to step in, and there has been some work done on it in the last Auckland City Council to look at how viable it is as a structure. A bazillion years ago, I was an usher in Queen Street, and so I know that theatre very well, and it is absolutely gorgeous, and the complex goes across the whole block. It's like the Civic across the road. So we definitely need to save it. I'm not sure about your point about whether this would be a Wellington issue, whether it's a central government issue, because I don't think it is. I think really this is where Auckland businesses and Auckland Council need to get their
I
act
agree.
together. And we can. I think we can.
Question to
absolutely agree.
both of you. Why the hell are Auckland City Council drilling a bloody ugly metal handrail down the middle of the 98-year-old Myers Park staircase for the Rugby World Cup? If they wanted safety features, put handrails on the grass on either side, but drilling down the middle of a century-old historic Auckland treasure is just vandalism, isn't it? Isn't it vandalism?
I'm going to have a completely unpolitical moment and say, sweetheart, you've only just told me about that. I'm horrified.
Please tell me
and
that's going-
sometimes we do stupid things. Let me find out what's happening and why it's happening. And if we aren't able to protect some infrastructure that's not even a building but a set of stairs, then let's look at a sensitive way of dealing with this. On the other hand, if the handrail's being built as we speak, we may be a bit late.
Denise, tell me you're going to support me on saving my
Absolutely.
goddamn stairs. I love Myers Park. It's a wonderful part of Auckland. We've got these 100-year-old staircase
Yeah.
in there, and they want to just... Why?
Well, I can imagine that you need the stairs to pull yourself up those bloody stairs
Of
because they
course,
are
of
extremely extreme.
Yes.
And unless you're a fitness freak, which some people are, you can get up them easily. But in the middle is just outrageous. I think what we've got here is a case of engineer stuff up. And we've seen it happen every now and then. I've seen roundabouts be put in where you can't get a bus round them, those sorts of things.
Yep.
So obviously this is just a matter of possibly the Deputy Mayor having a word with someone.
Damn, I'm glad of this program. Who wins, who loses by ignoring our heritage in Auckland? Who wins, who loses?
No one wins. So how can anyone win?
Developers
by ignoring
seem to
her?
be...
Yeah,
the Choi brothers seem to be doing
oh.
quite well, don't they?
Yeah.
I think even the developers in the long run will lose because you can have a soulless part of Auckland develop that no one wants to buy into. You look at what's happened down around Britomart, good, sensitive developers doing the right thing, they will win in the long term because they've respected heritage.
Who wins, who loses when we ignore Auckland heritage?
Well, I think Penny's point about Britamart's a very good one but you do get those unscrupulous developers who do come in, who do clear fell
yep,
the entire heritage that
yep.
you've got, that you've had for the last 100 years,
Yep.
and use it to speculate on property.
Yep.
So I think there is still some things that we need to be doing to
agree.
reduce
I
that.
mean, the way I see it today was, of course, the launch of all that money, 600 million to buy all of those properties down in Christchurch. I
Yeah.
just see it as we don't have any excuses to not look after our heritage. I mean, Christchurch's got plenty of excuses.
Yeah.
We don't. Issue 2, social responsibility time. Should chronic be sold in dairies and should loan sharks be reined in? Denise, I find it very difficult to take the cries of an inquiry into chronic seriously after its possible involvement in the death of one teenager when we have many more times dying from booze every year. Why can't we move with the same speed on alcohol reform as we seem to be on chronic? 20 deaths a week from alcohol and 200 sexual assaults per day from alcohol.
Well, I think maybe the reason for that is that chronic suppliers and producers are not giving donations to politicians.
So it's a political issue, isn't it? It's
Absolutely.
who's in your pocket
Yeah,
and
look,
then nothing happens.
Yeah, look, the Green Party policy has always been about harm reduction,
Yes.
and that's for whatever drugs, including the king drug, which is alcohol.
Yeah.
And the alcohol reform legislation that's just come back is, it was pretty stunning, really, and now it's been watered down again.
Isn't it just
And
that?
it's been watered down by the government.
Yeah.
And there's got to be a reason for that.
Penny, isn't the point of chronic that it makes a mockery of marijuana legislation? That's where our attention should be. I mean, former police brutality proponent Ross Morant, hardly amusingly munching tofu burger pinko, published an article this week on why marijuana should be decriminalised.
I know, I had to go back and read.
I know,
Say what? Who?
No one would buy synthetic cannabis if they could legally buy the real thing. Shouldn't we be debating decriminalisation rather than recriminalisation?
God, I'm from West Auckland. One of my things.
Say no more. Say no more.
The mum in me wants to say no, don't do anything. But decriminalisation, I have no problem with. However, I just do want to pick up on the point about alcohol reform and the fury that some of us feel with the fact that this is being procrastinated on, so that it's not going to go through before the election. It's appalling. We need to get alcohol out of the dairies. Get chronic out of the dairies, no problem with that. But get alcohol out of the dairies. Tighten up on our alcohol regulations. Out west, we have licensing trusts.
That's right.
For better or for worse, leave the gambling out of it.
Yep.
Alcohol is controlled by one body. And given the demographic makeup of the West, we kind of don't have the problems that some other areas do. I make no excuses for supporting strong alcohol reform.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
As
I
a
think
person who loves a glass of wine, I'm no wowser,
Amen.
but
Amen.
it is a dangerous, dangerous drug.
I think this government likes vice. You reckon?
I think they
Could
need
it?
to tax Vice. Denise, text by loan with shocking interest
Oh
rates
my
during
God.
the worst youth unemployment figures in 20 years is just a recipe for abuse by the poor and the desperate, isn't it? These dirty loan sharks who feed on the vulnerable and desperate, they've got to be reined in, don't they?
Absolutely. But you know, I've got to comment that this government does not have joined up thinking, because at one point you're saying, yeah, let's rein it in on the loan sharks. On the other side, they're saying, let's increase the amount of pokies we've got at the casino. Go have a look around the casino.
Yeah.
Check out the loan sharks there.
Yeah.
It's just not. It's not coming together for me. I don't think they're joining up the thinking. But yes, we definitely have to rein them in. It's outrageous.
Penny, Labour was weak in 2007 when they turned down loan shark reforms, and this government say they wish to educate rather than enforce interest caps. Why is it when middle class folk lose their money in finance companies, we need new regulation and broad new powers? When the poor and ill-educated continue to be trapped by loan sharks, we need a couple of pamphlets no one reads left outside the Citizens Advice Bureau.
I don't think there's too much I can add to that. It's interesting. Just prior to this, I was talking to a friend of mine from the Labour Party and said, you know, Carol Beaumont's bill was voted
Yeah.
down last year, but what did Labour do when they were in power? And he said, to be fair, the world was a slightly different place. You know, there wasn't necessarily the degree of complexity and stress that there is that exists these days. So, you know, that may be kind of gilding the picture a little bit, but I absolutely think that, you know, these tax loans are of huge concern. I can't believe that people could suddenly borrow $600 like that by just texting, you know, loan star 500 or whatever it is. And that combined with the excess of pokie machines, combined with the availability of alcohol, you know, it just layers up what is not necessarily a greatly healthy environment.
Question to both of you. A lot of media attention on Kings and the issues surrounding our national alcoholism have been reduced to simply a youth issue. Isn't raising the drinking age just a way of denying our cultural addiction to booze? And why should young people tolerate that kind of hypocrisy from adults?
My personal opinion on that is that it's not the young people that's the issue. It's the older people that are the issues. I mean, we know in my community that the boy racers and the drunk drivers are people in their 30s and 40s. But what we are seeing is we're seeing young people modelling behaviour that they're seeing from those older people, and that is extremely alarming. One way to reduce the access, and I think it does need to come down to access, is just simply put the price up. It's way too cheap. Put the price up.
Loss leadering in supermarkets is
Yeah.
an appalling thing.
Dairy,
Yeah.
supermarkets, specials. You can,
But it's
you
more
know,
expensive to buy water is showing you something's terribly wrong, isn't it?
absolutely. So, you know, put the price up. Young people have not got a lot of disposable income. It's going to reduce the problems that they've got.
When we make it just a young person issue, there's no deeper requirement on anyone else to look into our problems, right?
Indeed, I think, and that's the problem. Our young people, as we have all done, or perhaps you're far too respectable, young people become flamboyantly and exotically and, you know, tragically drunk in public. Old people of my age become aggressively, nastily and abusively drunk in their own homes, and that for me is the problem. We have an alcohol problem across the spectrum and we need to deal with it. Making it a young person's issue, I think, is absolutely re-victimising our young people who are watching us not coping with it, and we're expecting them to deal with it differently. It's nuts.
Who wins and loses by reining in loan sharks and chronic?
Society wins if we run them in,
Yep,
both of them.
yep.
Society wins and the dealers lose.
I like it when that happens. Thank you, panel. Coming up, the Mana by-election is the beginning of the end of the Māori Party. Who will win, and what are the ramifications if Mana does win? Citizen A is back after the break. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. This is Citizen A. We're reviewing the week with the Auckland Super City Deputy Mayor Penny Holtz and Auckland Central Green Party candidate Denise Roche. Issue 3 tonight. The Mana by-election is this week, and never before has a by-election meant so much for the political future of New Zealand. If Mana win, they could change the parliamentary math, giving the left their first narrative of how they beat a John Key government, and the meltdown of the Māori Party could spell their demise in their electorate seats at the hands of Labour in the general election. Penny, the Herald printed their latest anti-Hone editorial this week. That's now 4 anti-Hone editorials. They've done more negative media towards Hone than they have towards cancer this year. Add to that the blatant Osama bin Laden misquote and every mainstream political pundit calling it neck and neck for Calvin. Mana seems to have spooked the establishment somewhat, haven't they?
I think, to middle New Zealand or whatever it is, God knows who they are, Hone is quite scary because he, and if I'm really honest, every now and again I find myself going, oh God, what is this man saying? But then you listen to Māori and you realise that he utterly speaks from a Māori perspective for Māori. And for some of us white folk, that's frightening, and I think the Herald are just quietly fanning the flames of that fear because we don't necessarily understand that voice.
It's actually quite funny, isn't it? Many Māori consider Hone moderate.
Absolutely, indeed. Whew.
Denise, where are the Greens in all of this? Does your party's recent decision that it could, maybe, if possibly, if the moon is in the right position, do a deal with John Key if the price was green enough, mean the Greens are eyeing up more National Party bike track baubles than Mana Party systematic social justice change? What are you looking for here?
I don't think that's quite correct, actually, Bomber, because I think the Mana Party is that real voice that Hone is articulating. And I think we need more parties on the left.
Yep.
And that's what MMP is all about. It's about more diversity. It's about having more representation for the people who aren't represented. I think the Māori Party is, they probably started their demise when they got into bed with National. And we've seen that time and time again with minority coalition partners. We've seen it with ACT, we've seen it with Alliance, we've seen it with New Zealand First.
United?
United First, United Future.
That's right.
The only one really who has survived is United Future, is Peter Dunn, and I think that's because it's not really a party, it's more of a haircut.
A toupee, that's right, yeah, it's really more toupee than anything else.
So the Greens on this, I mean, we welcome it.
Yep.
Fantastic. I think it's going to be good for New Zealand.
And
I hope he gets in.
Who do the Greens think they could do more of a deal with? Could they do more of a deal with Labour, or could they do more of a deal with National?
We've said our preference would be for a Labour-led government, just because we've got more in common, but we'll hold them to account as well. We said it's about our policies, How
do the Greens hold on to that identity? I mean, we were just you're just talking about how those smaller parties get completely annihilated by the bigger parties' position.
Yeah.
How do the Greens, even if you were to cut a deal with Labour, and God forbid it National, how would you hold on to who you are as Greens?
Well, we're very principled, and you've seen that time and time and time again. And New Zealand has seen us work with both National, with memorandums of understanding, and you've seen us work with Labour as well.
Why didn't they run someone in the Taitokoro by-election?
Probably because we didn't have enough people up there.
That's a very honest sort of appraisal. Both of you, when Tariana described her candidate as not understanding politics, was she inadvertently describing herself or Solomon? Your thoughts?
Oh, I'm a fan of Tariana's. I've watched her work with dignity and humanity and honesty, and God help a politician who has those characteristics. They're always going to get done like a dog's dinner when they say something that's honest. Her candidate described himself, I think, as a Clydesdale, as a workhorse. I think she was being honest, and God love her for that. I do.
Was it a blunder or wasn't it?
It was a blunder. I mean, you don't talk about a kaumatua like that, and even if she has her own career status.
Yeah.
But and as an experienced politician, it was a blunder from her.
So was she sending a signal to Māori Party voters there that maybe don't give it to?
Yeah, I think she was actually. She's a very experienced and strategic thinker.
It's very. I know it would be unusual for her to slip up like that, wouldn't it?
Yeah,
yes.
That's true.
Prediction time: who's going to win and who's going to lose? Let's have it from you first. Come
I
on.
think kind of 70-30 to Hone, being in the West and realising that the West is part of Te Tau
That's
Tokerau,
right, that's
which
right,
I
that's
was
right.
quite excited about, really. I think Hone's going to come through.
Yeah, prediction, who's going to win, who's going to lose?
I think it's going to be Hone, and I really want it to be Hone.
God bless the Greens. Okay, let's wrap the show with last word. Penny, your last word this week is. We've got plenty of time. I've got a couple of extra minutes up my sleeve here for
Look,
this one.
it has to be Alistair Thompson announcing, to our shock and amazement, that women earn less because they have to take time off every month to have their periods, and God help them take time off to have babies. And for every woman in the country, I think we drew a collective breath and went, bloody hell, we've been missing out on something. None of us have ever taken time off. And for those of us past a certain age, I'm going to be asking for a pay rise. I don't get the suckers. I think I deserve to earn more.
Denise?
Yeah, that was my one as well. That was my pick. It was like, Alistair, where is your head? I just can't believe it. It sounds like something out of the 1960s, or maybe the 70s.
1860s.
Oh, 1860s.
1860s is where it sounds like it now.
But as well as that, it's this whole sort of concept that, you take sick days, women take sick days every month. It doesn't kind of explain why nurses are getting paid, 85% of what police get paid, and we've done the maths, we've looked at, we've done the job equations, we've looked at it, but you've still got the ghettos of women who are obviously all taking sick days every month against the ghettos of men. And he's a fool, he's a complete fool. I'm really hoping that maybe he'll redeem himself and turn up at the slut walk on Saturday.
If he hasn't got his period.
You turn up for all the wrong reasons. Look, as two female leaders in our country, how do you feel when you hear comments like that, just so jaw-droppingly sexist? I mean, is it angering, or are they just so stupid that you don't take
Actually,
notice
it makes my blood boil. And I have to say, Bomber, I've noticed over the last year, since the demise of high-ranking female politicians in this country, that there is a feeling that the boys are back in town, and suddenly we're finding more in the media and more spoken that possibly wouldn't have happened a few years ago. There's that quiet and subtle sexism that's reappeared, and I think it needs to stop.
As a female leader in your community, when you hear stuff like that, do you get angry, or do you just roll your eyes?
Furious. No, I get absolutely furious, to the point sometimes where I'm absolutely speechless. And I agree entirely with what Penny's saying. I had forgotten about sexism because I must have been in some other sort of world until I became a politician. And suddenly I was in Auckland City Council with Mayor Banks and a whole bunch of other old guys in suits, white guys in suits. I'd never seen such racism or sexism for 20 years. But it certainly is becoming more acceptable. And, okay, all us women, we've got to clamp down on it.
Do you think that someone like that, having those types of opinion, explain why so few women are on boards of companies in this country? Is that kind of mentality just completely armoured in there?
I think we've let our guard drop. I agree with what Denise is saying. It comes as such a shock. We thought we'd fought those battles. We thought that, equality was alive and well. And suddenly when we hear people making comments like that, the light goes off and you think, my God, some of these people making decisions about who's going to sit around the board table, and in the back of their minds they'll be thinking, she might not come to the board meeting because, it might be that time of the month. But if those kind of things are still spoken about, we need to pick up some of the battles again and get out there and refight the battles that our aunties and our mothers and our grandmothers fought.
Should he resign from the Employers and Manufacturers Association, yes or no?
Well, he should certainly take a pay cut.
Should he resign? Should he resign?
Oh, I think we don't think like that. We think
scornfully, you're going to get some. You're going to
It's
get
too
it.
simple.
It is. You need something a lot more thorough.
Way more
Let's
painful.
find something far more complicated.
Oh, bless.
Let's make him review, on behalf of the Employers and Manufacturers Association,
Mm-hmm.
all the numbers on the boards and replace men of a certain age by women.
Let's also get them to develop some family-friendly work policies, shall we?
Wouldn't that be great?
Indeed. Thank you, Denise. Thank you, Penny. Ladies and gentlemen, to my final word. I need to congratulate the National Party for managing to not only tailor policy that is counterproductive, it manages to be offensive as well. Youth rates of pay do nothing short of incentivise everyone under 24 into leaving New Zealand and gives under 24-year-old New Zealanders currently living overseas no reason whatsoever to return home. The idea of youth rates is as offensive as calling someone over the age of 18 youth in the first place. These aren't hoodie-wearing tagger boy racers terrorising your suburbs at night. They are young adults and have every right to demand the same protections to their worker rights as every citizen does. And research into the abolition of youth rates in 2007 showed no negative impact on employment whatsoever, so the job creation justification is just a myth. Defining 24-year-olds as youth and charging them less for their labour in a 19.4% unemployment environment is not only patronising, it's exploitation. Turns out that change John Key promised Generation Y at the last election was really loose change, as in that's what you get paid now. If you like tonight's show, please join our Citizen A Facebook site and connect with other like-minded new citizens, and follow me on my Citizen Bomber Twitter and Facebook page. Thanks for watching, whānau. Good night, Aotearoa.
Supporting local content so you can see more of New Zealand on air.